France had been missing from the high-performance sports car world for decades when the 1980s arrived. Italian exotics dominated the scene. German engineering was everywhere. British roadsters still had their fans. But French sports cars? That was ancient history. Then two French engineers, Claude Poirot and Gérard Godefroy, decided to change everything. They founded Venturi with a clear mission: build a homegrown Grand Tourer that could stand alongside Europe's finest exotic machines. What emerged from their small workshop in Cholet, France, was the Venturi, a mid-engine sports car that almost nobody outside dedicated car circles has heard of, yet it made history in its own quiet way. The first model arrived in 1989 as the Venturi 200. This was a refined two-seat GT car with sleek composite bodywork hiding its mechanical soul. Under that smooth exterior sat a mid-mounted 2.5-liter turbocharged V6 engine. This was the PRV V6, a joint design from Peugeot, Renault, and Volvo, tuned here to produce 200 horsepower. That number gave the car its name. The engine connected to a 5-speed manual transmission, and the entire package weighed only about 1,100 kilograms, roughly 2,425 pounds. Those numbers translated to real-world performance that impressed. 0 to 100 kilometers per hour happened in under 7 seconds. Top speed reached around 240 kilometers per hour, which converts to 150 miles per hour. These figures were not class-leading, but the Venturi 200 was never about pure horsepower wars. It offered something else entirely. What made the Venturi special was balance and finesse. The steering was sharp and communicative. The handling stayed composed through corners. The brakes delivered strong, confident stopping power. On twisty back roads, the Venturi 200 became a joy to pilot. Each car was assembled in a small workshop with artisanal care and attention. Fewer than 100 units of the Venturi 200 were ever built during its production run. That instantly made it a rare collector's item, though few collectors outside France even knew it existed. Early customers loved the Venturi 200, but they wanted more. They asked for more power, more speed, more excitement. Venturi answered in 1989 with an upgraded model called the Venturi 260. As the name suggested, it packed roughly 260 horsepower from an enlarged 2.8-liter turbo V6. That extra punch transformed the driving experience completely. 0 to 100 kilometers per hour dropped to roughly 5.3 seconds. Top speed climbed north of 260 kilometers per hour. From the outside, the Venturi 260 looked similar to its younger sibling. But under the skin, refinements had been made to handle the higher output safely and reliably. Venturi took things further with special variants. They produced limited editions like the 260 LM, which stood for Le Mans. This version featured weight reductions and track-focused upgrades. They also built the Atlantique 260, a stripped-down version weighing just 1,110 kilograms, celebrating their racing efforts and philosophy of lightness. These French rockets could now accelerate on par with Porsche 911s and Ferraris of the same era. Yet Venturi remained an underdog brand that most people had never heard of. Venturi never became a household name, but it earned a passionate cult following among those who understood what they were witnessing. By the early 1990s, the company would even compete at Le Mans and briefly in Formula One racing, punching far above its weight for such a tiny manufacturer. The Venturi 200 and 260 laid the foundation for later Venturi models like the 400 GT. They proved that French engineers could craft a credible sports car from scratch, competing with established names. Today, these late 1980s Venturis are virtually forgotten in the mainstream automotive world. They remain a discreet legend for those in the know. Spotting one on the road is extremely rare, but any true car enthusiast who does will recognize the significance immediately. This was a French lightweight sports car that dared to take on the world's best, and it nearly succeeded. Switzerland is famous for precision watches, fine chocolate, and beautiful mountain scenery. Nobody thinks about Switzerland when discussing roaring V8 supercars. But in 1970, Swiss car constructor Peter Monteverdi set out to change that perception forever. Monteverdi was a charismatic garage owner turned car builder with a fascinating backstory. He had worked as a dealer for exotic Italian sports cars, until a bitter falling out pushed him to create his own machine. The story echoes Ferruccio Lamborghini's famous origin tale. Monteverdi wanted to beat the Italians at their own game, on their own terms. The car he built was called the High 450, where high means shark in German. It was an appropriate name for a predator designed to dominate the supercar world. The Monteverdi High 450 SS made its public debut at the 1970 Geneva Motor Show, appearing in a striking metallic purple color that demanded attention. This car looked like something from a wild automotive fever dream. It was one of the world's first mid-engined supercars to emerge from a small, independent workshop. Monteverdi did not hold back on specifications or ambition. He managed to shoehorn a massive 7.0-liter Chrysler 426 Hemi V8 engine right behind the two-seat cabin. This American-sourced powerhouse generated a claimed 450 horsepower, which gave the High its numerical designation. The SS stood for Super Sports. A 5-speed ZF transaxle sent all that power to the rear wheels. Monteverdi boasted that his creation could rocket from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 4.8 seconds and exceed 175 miles per hour at top speed. Few people ever got the chance to verify those numbers independently. However, one Swiss magazine did push the High to around 175 miles per hour, which equals 282 kilometers per hour, on a test track. That represented serious performance for the early 1970s. The High's design was as dramatic as the engine lurking behind the seats. The body sat extremely low, measuring only about 40 inches in total height. It featured a pointed shark-like nose and pop-up headlights that enhanced the aggressive appearance. Famed designer Trevor Fiore of Carrozzeria Fissore in Italy penned the curvy, flowing shape. The High 450 had an aggressive stance that turned heads everywhere it went. That purple prototype, nicknamed Purple Smoke, became such a sensation that Monteverdi used it mainly as a show car to draw attention to his brand. People would gather around it at auto shows, mesmerized by its audacious styling. A second car was built in 1973, called the High 450 GTS. This version featured a slightly longer wheelbase and minor cosmetic tweaks compared to the original SS. It was repainted red and received higher door handles for easier entry. The GTS retained essentially the same formula underneath, an insanely overpowered mid-engine GT, with perhaps a 7.2-liter V8. This second car marked the end of High production, though not for lack of interest in the design itself. Monteverdi had originally planned to build 49 copies of the High for paying customers, creating an exclusive but viable supercar. Fate had other ideas entirely. The car carried an astronomical price tag of around $27,000 in 1970, which was hypercar money at that time. Even wealthy buyers hesitated. The challenges of taming a race-level Hemi engine for civilized street driving also scared people away. Insurance and maintenance would have been nightmares. In reality, only 2 complete Highs were ever finished, one SS and one GTS. That makes it one of the absolute rarest supercars in automotive history. Monteverdi later claimed to have delivered up to 11 of them to customers over the years, but no documentation or evidence backs that claim up. In the 1990s, Monteverdi built a couple of replica Highs from leftover parts for his personal museum. But the original shark cars remain almost mythical. The High 450 never entered proper series production, but its legacy remains fascinating decades later. It proved that even a small Swiss outfit with limited resources could design a breathtaking, insane sports car, one that could theoretically stand wheel-to-wheel with Lamborghinis and Ferraris, at least on paper. The High's story did not quite end in the 1970s either. Monteverdi made a brief comeback attempt in 1992 with a concept called the High 650 F1. This used a 650 horsepower Formula One engine mounted in a lightweight carbon fiber chassis weighing just 750 kilograms. That combination would have been an absolute rocket ship. Unfortunately, it never found buyers either. But it showed that Peter Monteverdi never gave up on his shark like ambition. Today, the Monteverdi High is a little-known marvel among automotive historians. A supercar from the land of neutrality that was anything but neutral in character. It represents a rare piece of automotive history that almost nobody knows about, yet its audacity and extreme exclusivity earn it a deserved place on this list. In the early 1960s, a small garage in England was producing featherweight sports cars that could embarrass much larger, more powerful machines on the racetrack. The company was Ginetta, founded by four brothers named Bob, Ivor, Travers, and Douglas Wauchlet in 1958. Their dream was simple: build race-capable cars that regular people could also enjoy on the road. By 1961, they introduced the Ginetta G4, a tiny two-seater roadster that would become their most famous model and earn the nickname Giant Killer in British motorsport circles. While hardly anyone outside the United Kingdom had heard of Ginetta, those in the know realized this little car was something genuinely special. What made the G4 so remarkable was its extreme simplicity and astonishingly light weight. The car featured a lightweight tubular steel spaceframe chassis with a fiberglass body bonded directly on top. This construction method kept the G4's curb weight incredibly low. Early versions weighed roughly 500 kilograms, which equals about 1,100 pounds. For context, that is roughly half the weight of a typical contemporary sports car from that era. This massive weight advantage gave the G4 extraordinary handling characteristics that left competitors baffled. The design incorporated a one-piece nose section that flipped forward for easy engine access. It used race-derived double wishbone front suspension for precise control. Initially, it had a live rear axle located by trailing arms and coil springs, though later versions received independent rear suspension for even better handling. This was a minimalist sports car in the finest British tradition. No unnecessary frills, no excess weight, just the absolute essentials for speed and driver enjoyment. The G4 was sold as either a complete vehicle or as a kit car, meaning enthusiastic owners could assemble one at home in their own garage. A variety of small engines could fit in the compact engine bay, giving buyers flexibility. The most popular power plants were tuned Ford, four-cylinder engines, which were affordable, reliable, and had strong aftermarket support. The very first G4s carried a humble 1.0-liter Ford engine, making around 55 to 60 horsepower. That might sound pathetic by modern standards, but given the car's flyweight construction, even that modest output provided genuine fun. Many owners quickly upgraded to larger, more powerful engines once they understood what the chassis could handle. One highly prized setup was the 1.5 to 1.6-liter Lotus Ford twin-cam engine, which could easily double the horsepower figure to over 100. With the bigger engines installed, a Ginetta G4 could out-accelerate and out-corner far more powerful, expensive cars. This earned it the well-deserved Giant Killer nickname in racing circles. On the racetrack, G4s frequently stunned the competition and embarrassed drivers of more famous brands. They proved repeatedly that clever engineering and low mass could beat raw horsepower in the real world. As one classic car publication noted, Ginetta remains among the best-kept secrets of the sports car world, perfectly exemplifying Britain's traditional knack for building nimble little racers that punch above their weight class. Ginetta built the G4 continuously from 1961 until 1969, during which time it underwent several updates designated as Series 1 through Series 4. But every version stayed faithful to the core, lightweight formula that made it special. Approximately 500 units were produced in that initial run, though exact numbers remain debated since many were sold as kits and never properly registered. The car's enduring popularity in club racing and track day events actually led to an unexpected revival. In the 1980s, Ginetta brought the G4 back into limited production due to continued enthusiast demand. Even today, you can order a brand new G4 from a specialty firm in the United Kingdom, proving the timeless appeal of this simple design. To drive a Ginetta G4 is to experience pure, old-school motoring in its most undiluted form. The car sits low to the ground. Doors are optional on many versions. Creature comforts are essentially non-existent. But the mechanical feedback and agility are off the charts amazing. This unassuming British roadster may not boast a famous nameplate that everyone recognizes, but it taught the automotive world a lasting lesson that engineers still reference today. Lightweight design can beat raw power on any given day. The final hidden gem on this list predates all the others and comes from an unlikely source: DKW, one of the German brands that later merged to form what we now know as Audi. In the mid-1950s, DKW was primarily known for making small two-stroke economy cars designed for frugal transportation, not sleek sports machines. But a pair of racing drivers saw hidden potential in the humble little DKW sedan and decided to create something extraordinary. The result was the DKW Monza, a petite sports coupe produced from 1956 to 1958 that went on to set multiple world records, then mysteriously faded into near-complete obscurity. The DKW Monza was essentially a heavily modified DKW 3=6 Sonderklasse underneath its skin, but with a completely new lightweight body and an obsessive focus on aerodynamics. Designers Günther Ahrens and Albrecht Mansell took the strong but ordinary DKW chassis and clothed it in an extremely lightweight fiberglass shell crafted by specialist coach builders in Stuttgart. Using fiberglass reinforced plastic for a car body was cutting-edge technology at that time, still relatively new and unproven. But it slashed weight dramatically compared to traditional steel construction. The Monza's body was smoother, lower, and narrower than the steel-bodied sedan it was based on, significantly reducing wind resistance. All told, the Monza coupe weighed only about 780 kilograms on average, which equals 1,720 pounds. This represented a reduction of 115 kilograms compared to the standard production car. With less weight to move and much better streamlining, the modest engine inside could truly shine and deliver impressive performance. And modest that engine certainly was. Like all DKW vehicles of that era, it featured a tiny 900 cubic centimeter three-cylinder two-stroke engine making just 40 horsepower. That might sound laughably small and underpowered by any measure, but thanks to the lightweight construction and slippery aerodynamics, the Monza could reach about 140 kilometers per hour, which equals 87 miles per hour. In comparison, the regular steel-bodied sedan managed only around 125 kilometers per hour at best. Acceleration from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour improved from a glacial 31 seconds down to roughly 20 seconds. That is still slow by today's standards, but it represented a noticeable jump in performance for the 1950s. The car earned its Monza name after the famed Italian Grand Prix circuit, and for a very good reason that would make headlines. In December 1956, a team of drivers took a DKW Monza to the Monza racetrack in Italy for a series of endurance and speed record attempts. They drove the little coupe around the banked circuit non-stop in grueling endurance tests, successfully setting 5 international speed and distance records for its engine displacement class. The tiny car averaged 140 kilometers per hour over incredibly long distances without mechanical failure. This was an amazing, almost unbelievable feat for such a small engine at that time in automotive history. Those record runs instantly gave the Monza its legend and cemented the name forever. Production of the DKW Monza was always a small-scale cottage industry affair, never a mass manufacturing operation. Initially, a company called Dannenhauer and Staus built a handful of the lightweight fiberglass bodies. Later, other small firms like Massholder and then Robert Schenck took on the specialized job, each producing small batches as orders trickled in. The exact total number produced remains something of a mystery even today. Poor record-keeping and the fact that some cars were sold as kits make it extremely hard to pin down a precise figure. Recent research by DKW historians suggests around 75. Complete cars were built in total, give or take a few. Earlier estimates were sometimes higher, with some sources mentioning 230 cars, but those numbers possibly counted spare bodies or unverified records that cannot be confirmed. Even at the highest estimates, the Monza qualifies as an exceptionally rare bird. By 1958, production wound down and eventually stopped. Auto Union, which was DKW's parent company, introduced a new model called the 1000 SP Spartan Sports Coupe in 1957. They were no longer enthusiastic about supplying chassis for the independent Monza project. Without factory support, the little record-breaker's brief career was cut short.